Lastly, on the superintendent's report, we have a very preliminary budget kind of introduction, I will say, from Mr. Olson. Very early in the process, so he'll just give us some. He's just going to give us some big picture, and we're expecting to come back in a couple of weeks with something more specific.
Thank you. As Dr. Paolino said, this will be brief and preliminary. There's a lot of data coming in right now. I know that some of you were quite well aware that the governor proposed a budget recently, and we've been getting data from Albany about PRS rates and such. So a lot coming at us, and we're going to be assembling it over the next as the weeks go by. We're going to be placing it together for the next one. So I just have a couple of slides, really. I just have a couple of slides, period, actually. The first slide is about revenue, and there's two points I want to discuss here. The governor's budget. The governor's budget for us, there's about $900,000 in new money, which is less than 2% of our current state aid budget. So, and then there's some building aid as well, but I'll get to that second. So of the $900,000, there's about $400,000 that I would call unrestricted, and the other $500,000 is a category called community schools aid, which is double what it was last year. And last year came with strings attached that we had to do certain things with that money that involved, for instance, hiring a new social worker. So I just wanted to point out that if new initiatives are required with this $500,000, which we don't know yet, and Dr. Paolino is investigating that through his contacts with the state, it will probably be offset by expense increases. If we're fortunate that there isn't sort of a match like that and there aren't strings, then then the $500,000 will be like the $400,000, and it'll be $900,000, sort of a new money that we can apply to our expenses. On the building aid side, to the extent that the building aid side in the governor's budget is somewhat inexact in that they place on their they placed in that proposal any building aid that we could potentially get if we actually finish projects and made all the proper filings, which won't happen. So to the extent that we get new building aid, it'll be offset by debt service, of course, that we have to get to pay for the projects that we're finishing up. The second note here is on the tax cap calculation. There's a couple things that we know now. One is the growth factor, which is kind of the CPI, and that's the same number for every school district in the state, 1.26%. We used to talk about the 2% tax cap, and the 2% tax cap was all about 2% inflation. Well, as some people have been wont to say around the state, it's not 2% and it's not a tax cap, and indeed this year it's not 2%, it's 1.26%. The other factor that's been released is our growth factor, which is KCSD specific, and as you can see there, it's 0.12%, pretty close to zero. And that's reflective of our area and the growth in our tax base and our assessment base, which is obviously low. So those are the revenue comments that I wanted to make tonight. On the expense side, 4 comments, I guess. We have some contracts in place, as you know, and of course with the Triborough Amendment in place, contracts continue even if they have run out vis-a-vis the dates on them. So we have contracts in place that contain increases in the 2 to 4% range right now, and of course FICA follows that. So those are some material increases, as you can well imagine, since our salary base in the district is in excess of $60 million. On the health insurance side, we've been hearing some early whisperings that rates are going up markedly. And as you all know, to another rate. And again, we've understood that that rate and some other rates like it are moving up markedly. So we haven't heard much about our Empire rate yet, but I'm meeting with our broker on Valentine's Day, so he'll have some good news for us. On the retirement side, a piece of good news, the TRS rate is going to decline into next year. So that rate decline will provide us savings, which obviously will be netted against some of these costs. On the ERS side, we don't know the rate yet. We don't know if there's going to be a rate change or not. And finally, on the debt service side, we and our financial advisors are busy figuring out cash flows and figuring out the Second Century project. But one thing is clear, and it shouldn't be a surprise, is that there'll be a material increase in the debt service as we finalize contracts. And we're financing, as you know, we've been financing a lot of construction. You just saw pictures of it from Mr. Clapper. And as that has happened, we are paying bills. And so we've paid a lot of bills, tens of millions of dollars of bills so far, and we'll be financing those bills. So the debt service amount will increase as we knew it would when we proposed this project in the first place. So as the coming weeks pass, we will be getting more data. Some of these things will start to become more solidified, and we will be continuing our analysis and presenting to you numbers that will begin to show a picture of how our budget will look in 17-18 and what our constraints will be and such. So, any questions?
Do you see us having a preliminary budget prior to March 1st?
Yes.
Maybe by the next meeting? Do we have a run to go at it?
I would like to think that we would have something to show you by next meeting.
And then after that, will we begin public forums?
Yes.
Yes. So we'll set them and put them on the website.
Yes.
Any other questions for Mr. Olson? Mr. Jordan?
Is there anything we should be asking right
Haven't. That would imply there was something I should have said that I didn't. I would say no. It's there are so many moving parts right now that if we could have put our finger on this and sort of given you something more specific, we would have, but we can't. It would be really premature to try to speculate on how this is all going to come together into things like what our tax levy might have to be. So I would say.
And just for my own information and understanding, the debt service, is that, as soon as we pay a bill, are we reimbursed by the state, or is there a lag time?
There's a lag time. We get reimbursed by the state over a 15-year period.
That's terrible.
And it's factual.
But my understanding is that it wasn't always that way.
I believe you're right, it was not.
So,
The state does strange things. I'll just give you an example that has nothing to do with the debt service. In our Audit and Finance Committee meeting earlier this week, Ms. Woodard, our treasurer, revealed to the committee that we had received a payment recently from state aid that we were owed from 2002-2003 school year. So, the state's view of these things is, if you owe us money, send it. If we owe you money, when we have it, we'll send it to you. So that's obviously 15 school years ago, or 14.
and they didn't pay interest, right?
I don't think so, no.
But it seems to me that, we're in this big building project, so of course it affects us more than a lot of surrounding school districts. If you're not in a building project, it probably doesn't have that effect. And I just wonder how we can somehow change this, because it just seems that taxpayers are paying twice in a way. You know, their money is coming to us, but then it's being, we have to pay interest on that money again.
Yes, that is absolutely true.
Mr. Shaughnessy.
Well, I mean, we had discussions about this at the Audit and Finance Committee meeting yesterday, so perhaps if I can make some comments appropriate here. Well, first of all, your question about getting paid over 15 years, I mean, the state, if I'm not mistaken, the state pays its share as we pay our share of the borrowers. Now, you know, if we had to finance, I mean, we couldn't afford a building project without borrowing.
Right.
You can't borrow without paying interest. I mean, that's just the way it is.
But if they can lag the time and extend that time between the time we're paying our bills with that borrowed money and the time they pay us back, it seems that we're not able to invest that money. It should be our money right away. You see what I'm getting at?
If I can just say, if they paid us, say, over 5 years, and then we would only have to borrow over 5 years, there'd be much less interest cost.
Right.
So the longer they pay over, the longer we have to finance over, and
But we would have to levy higher taxes in order to have our share, because we have to pay principal over 5 years instead of paying principal over
I see.
15 years or principal over 20 years. You know, I mean, you could buy a house and get a 5-year mortgage, and
Right.
you know, you would pay
Right. But you have to put a lot of-
30% of the cost of the house every year
Right.
for 5 years, or whatever. I mean, something like that is just not feasible.
And when we went through the finances of the project, you know, pre-referendum, the cost to finance this project over time was included in what we were doing. So we knew this, you know,
Right.
not that I
I
understand.
know, it
your
just seems
business.
like added
Yeah.
cost to the taxpayers, but I appreciate you trying to tutor me, because I'm trying to. Thank you.
One of the things that we talked about on finance was the tax certiorari proceedings that have been filed against with the district. You know, two in particular are the Tech City properties of Allen Ginsberg and the Hudson Valley Mall. There have been petitions filed for reductions in assessments that would total almost $3 million a year in tax revenue for the district if they were successful in that. So that doesn't affect our tax cap, but it does. It affects who pays that tax cap. You know, so that's a concern that the Audit and Finance Committee has. As we don't have a robust economy, it makes it more difficult to finance our educational programs. It places more of a burden on other property owners. How that will play out over the next 3 to 5 years, we don't know, but it's certainly a concern.
Anybody else have a question for Mr. Olson?